Hi kids, welcome to YouTube, Miss Nancy's Bible College for Kids. Today's lesson is in the Old Testament. I call it 4 lepers leaping. Not lepers, not the animals, but lepers. They have leprosy, which is a big type of sin. Their skin is rotting and flaking and falling off. And that's the way we look to God, and we stink something fierce. But today's lesson is in 2 Kings, and it starts in chapter 6 and we go to chapter 7. I'm going to start off telling you how bad it was in Samaria. This is the invasion of Syria army against Samaria. And so we start out in chapter 6. It came to pass after this that Ben-hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his host and went up to besiege Samaria. And there was a great famine. That means there was absolutely no food. People were literally starving to death, kids. There was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it, until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, 80 pieces of silver for a donkey's head, and the 4th part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. I'm not even going to go into that. And right after this, kids, Miss Nancy's going to do something different. I want to make your parents nosy like Miss Nancy's nosy. So I'm going to challenge them if they want to tell you some of this other really bad, horrible stuff that happened. But it's true because it's in the Bible. Then they can. But I don't think I should at this time. And then it goes on. And this king, he is threatening Elisha, the man of God, and said he's going to kill him. But Elisha's sitting in the palace. He ain't a bit worried. And we're going to go on now and start chapter 7. So I gave you the background of what's going on. Here we go. Then Elisha said, "Hear ye the word of the Lord." That's always something good to listen to, kids. That's why you got me on here, hopefully. "Thus saith the Lord, tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria." So he's saying this thing is going to flip over. And he said, what is so costly now for something that's not very good? Tomorrow, we're going to almost give it away. It's going to be that plentiful. It's going to be there. Then the Lord, on whose hand the king leaned, answered the man of God and said, "Behold, if the Lord make windows in heaven, might this thing be?" And he said, "Behold, thou shalt see it, but with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof." And there were 4 leprous men. How many? 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate. And they said one to another, "Why sit we here until we die?" So they're going to have to make some decisions. Not any good choices, they thought, because it was so desperate and they was ready to die anyway. But they said, "Why sit we here until we die? If we say we will enter the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we sit here still, we will die also. Now, therefore, come." So they're thinking, we're going to do something. We got to do something. We're going to die here. "So therefore, come, and let us fall into the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live. And if they shall kill us, we shall but die." They ain't got much to give. They're on their last legs anyway, their skin falling off. So they rose up in the twilight. That's what I like about this. 4 lepers leaping in the twilight. That's what I call it. "And they rose up in the twilight to go into the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria," now think about this. They thought they was going to this army, this big army that was going to attack them anyway. So they could just get handcuffed, drug off. Maybe they'd give them a piece of bread or a drink of water or something. And anyway, there was nobody there. There was no man there. For the Lord, here's why there was nobody in that camp. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And here's what they said to one another. "Lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the king of the Hittites and the king of the Egyptians to come upon us." Wherefore, here's what they did when they thought that. "Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight." So I want to stop right there a minute. It says that the 4 lepers rose up and went towards the city. No, they didn't go to the city. They went towards the army. I apologize for that. So they was going where the Syrians was. And then it says that the Syrians heard that noise that the Lord sent, and they arose at twilight, and they left. So here they are leaving. They're probably running. I'm sure that the lepers was not running that fast to get over there to get killed or whatever. So they're going in the same direction, just at different speeds. Anyway, they rose and fled at twilight. And here's what they did. They left their tents, their horses, their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went into one tent and did eat and drink, and carried thence silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it. And came again, and entered into another tent, and carried thence also, and went and hid it. I wonder how many times they could have done that until they realized. But then they said one to another, we do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. And kids, I want to stop right there and say, we have the best news anybody could get. You can be saved by believing on Jesus Christ. Are we telling them that? It's a sad day when we don't tell about the stuff that we need to. That's an important thing. So they're saying, we can't hold our peace. We can't keep this to ourselves. We need to tell others. But anyway, they said, if we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell. That's something you kids can do. You can go and tell, like these lepers. And they went to the king's household to tell. So they came and called upon the porter of the city. This city was walled and had the gate, so it was guarded. Nobody could have got in. But they hollered out at the porter, and they told him, saying, we came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither voice of man, but horses tied, and the asses tied, and the tents are as they were. And so he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house. And the king arose in the night. Remember, they had all fled during the twilight, but now it's nighttime. We don't know how far they went. We don't know how slow they went, how long it took them, but it went from twilight to nighttime. And the king arose in the night, and here's what he thought. He said to his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. He thinks he knows what they're doing. They know that we be hungry. Therefore are they gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, when they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive and get into that city. And one of the servants answered and said, so he had something to say, because I would say everyone there was very desperate, guys, as I'm sure we would be if it was us. He said, let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, there are as the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, I say, they are even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed. And let us send and see. So we can go and tell. We can send somebody to see. And let's go on. They took therefore 2 chariot horses. So the king had said, you know, he thought it was a trick. And then somebody said, let's send 5 horses. So everybody's talking about it. And then they decided, let's send 2 horses. So they sent 2 chariot horses. And the king sent after the host of Syrians, saying, go and see. Go and see. So you're to go and tell, and you're to send so that they can see, and then you're to go and see. Ask your friends, are you saved? Do you know Jesus? Jesus died for you. Are you a Christian? And they went after them unto Jordan, and lo, all the way was full of garments and vessels, which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out and spoiled the tents of the Syrians. They went in, that means they took everything that they had. It's the spoils of war. They got to reap the benefits of what the Syrians had. But anyway, so a measure of fine flour sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley sold for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. If the word of the Lord, which we're always in, tells you something, you can absolutely know for sure that it is true. And the king appointed the Lord. Remember, the king was leaning on this guy. And this guy, which is called a Lord, not our Lord, it's a little L. And the king appointed the Lord on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. And the people trod upon him in the gate. That means they stomped him, and he died. as the man of God had said, who spake when the king came down to him. And it came to pass, as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And that Lord answered the man of God and said," now remember this, kids, this guy that the king was leaning on, listening to and everything. He said, "Now behold, if the Lord should make windows in heaven, might this thing be?" And then Elisha told him, "Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof." And so it fell unto him, for the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. This Lord on who the king was trusting so much, he got it wrong, guys, and he don't have another chance. We know where he is. But before we start the questions and answers, Miss Nancy wants to give you one more little line from the first book of the Bible, Genesis, not the oldest book, but the first one in order. And it's Genesis 7:11, parents. And it says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, and in the 17th day, the same month, were all the fountains of all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened." Hey kids, you know that heaven has windows now. Too bad this man didn't know it. He might have stood down and not said what he said, but it's too late for him. It's not too late for us. Okay, who was the king in this story that was going against the city? King Benadad. What was happening in Samaria? There was a great famine, and what does that mean, kids? There was no food, was there? People died because they were starving so much. Who was the man of God in this story? Elisha. What announcement did Elisha make? Just like me. "Hear ye the word of the Lord. Tomorrow," now I didn't give you this word, but Elisha did. "Tomorrow, about this time," he's saying things are going to change. And what was going to happen where there was no food? He said you could buy a measure of fine flour for a shekel, or you could take 2 measures of barley and buy them for a shekel in the gate of the Samaria. And what did the Lord nearby that the king was leaning on, what did he say? He said, "Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be?" What did Elisha tell him? He said, "You'll see it with your own eyes, but you won't get a taste of it." And so we know what's going to happen there. How many lepers were there in this story? 4. 4 lepers leaping. I can just see them. And where were they at? They were sitting outside the gate. They wasn't allowed in the city because nobody wanted to catch this horrible disease, leprosy, that these men had. And so one day they decided what? They said, "What are we going to do, guys? If we go to the city, there's a famine there, we'll die. If we sit here, we're going to die." And so they decided to do something. What did they decide to do? They said, "We'll go into the Syrians and we'll just cast ourselves at their mercy. If they save us alive, well, that's good. But if they kill us, we're just going to die, that's all." So they decided in the twilight of the evening to get up and go to the Syrian camp. And when they got there, what did they find, or who did they find? They didn't find anybody, did they? But they did find some stuff. And so they had left everything just like it was, their tents full of stuff, and had ran for their lives. But what caused them to run away? Because the Lord sent a sound of chariots and horses and a great host of many people. They heard it and they got afraid. What did they think? They thought that the king had got other kings to help him and that they was coming to get him, didn't they? So what did they do? They rose up at twilight and they fled. So they're running that way. Then the lepers was going towards your camp the same way. I can just see that in my mind. I would love to have an overview of that. But anyway, Nosy Nancy, always nosing, you know. But okay, when the lepers got to the uttermost part of the camp, what did they find? They found a lot of stuff, didn't they? But in the road, they found raiment and vessels and all that stuff. But then when they got to the first tent, what did they do? What did they find? Well, they found raiment, and they found silver, and they found gold, and they got it, and they packed it up and took it out, and they ate. Then what did they do? They went to another tent and did the same thing, didn't they? And then they came to themselves. I've been so goofy sometimes I have to think, what am I doing? And they said, this is a day of good tidings. We can't keep this to ourselves. We got to tell somebody. So where did they go? They went to the city. And they called out to the man up at the top, called the porter, and they said, hey, guess what we did? And they told him the story. What did that porter do? He called the other porters and told them. And then where did they all go to tell somebody? They went to the king, didn't they? What did the king think, kids? The kid said, I'll tell you what they've done. I know what they've done, because he know everything, I guess. He said, they know we're hungry, and they know that if they can trick us into coming out, they'll get out of the woods and stuff, and then they'll come and get us, and then they'll come into our city. But then this one man, he was desperate, so he said, king, this is Miss Nancy ad-libbing or just telling you a story, not really reading it. But he said, king, why don't we send like 5 chariot horses out and just maybe see what's going on? So finally the king, he thought, well, I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. So how many horses did he send? He sent out 2, didn't he? And when they came and told the people, what did the people do? Well, they went running to the Syrian camp, didn't they? That's what I would have done. So when they was going towards Jordan, what was the way they're full of? Where the people had fled, the Syrians. It was full of garments and vessels that they just throw down when they was running. And so when the messengers told the king, the people went, and they went fast. But did it come true about the man that the king was leaning on, about what Elisha, the man of God, told him? Yeah, because that king put that same man in charge at the gate, and when all the people in that city found out that it was true, what the lepers said, they all went running to the tents, and they spoiled their tents, and they took everything. But that man that was at the gate, he got trod down like horses running over you. The people was running over him, and he died. And sure enough, the next day, you could buy some fine flour, or you could buy some fine barley for 1 shekel, because it was everywhere. Don't you love this story? Guys, I hope you did. I know I do, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks, parents. I hope you can tell them a little bit about the part before the story starts. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.